is home of the world's most ancient civilizations. Anthropologists have been able to date early human settlements in Africa as far back as 160,000 years, thanks to groundbreaking findings like the Udoltu, a collection of modern human fossils discovered in Ethiopia in 1997. Collected evidence suggests that these early settlers possessed and used intelligence, ingenuity, and enterprise. Geneticists have also identified that every living person's DNA possesses a link of common ancestry to early African civilizations, which traces the root of every family tree to this rich land. Today, we also know that human migrations from Africa started about 120,000 years ago, but only about 80,000 years ago did Africans successfully and rapidly accomplish to migrate to other parts of the world. Africans set the blueprint for modern human activity. Artifacts collected in anthropological sites dating from early migrations demonstrate the artistic expressions that Africans were already capable of, a sign of their cognitive ability and social awareness. Slow and progressive climate changes caused Africans to disperse within the continent. The result were well-organized and powerful civilizations built around trade networks along the Nile Valley, like Egypt and Nubia, where evidence of written language, art, agriculture, music, and law have been found, as well as the famous pyramids that are a testament of African development in mathematics and engineering. Between 1800 and 1500 BC, Africans were already making use of iron, a material suspected to be used initially for decor, but one they later discovered could be used for weaponry. Gold was another known material mostly used for royal artifacts in both Egypt and Nubia. It was a symbol of power and wealth, and it was precisely the power and wealth accumulated by these kingdoms that caused the Roman Empire to start pushing its geographical boundaries toward them. But today we know that a fierce warrior, a one-eyed Nubian queen called Amon-Arenas, pushed back in 23 BC, defeating Augustus Caesar's army, the most powerful in the world at the time, and with that win, she secured another 400 years of independence for Africans. It is important to understand that African American political thought has historically been very diverse, and it continues to be. Martin Luther King Jr.'s nonviolent approach was different from that of several other Black groups who felt it took more than just words to regain the basic humanity their people had been denied for hundreds of years. Besides differences in gender, class, religion, and sexual orientation, the Black community has historically adopted diverse ideologies like liberalism, Black Marxism, Black nationalism, and Black feminism. However, there are common threads at the core of these ideologies: the need to self-determine and the desire to be treated equally. The term African American itself is not a scientific category. Racial classification is a social, political, and economic construct. There is no genetic category for African Americans. However, race becomes real through lived experience and can be imposed or chosen. Resistance has been at the core of Black political thought. The slave rebellions, the abolitionist movement, and the Back to Africa movement, to name a few, all share this commonality. The Third World Strike of 1968 was no exception. This was a well-organized student movement initiated by the San Francisco State College Black Students Union. The strike was responsible for creating the momentum that Black studies needed to be taught in college. After 1 year of disruptions and often heated encounters with the police, the strike was successful not only at achieving the creation of Black studies, but also impacting California history, for it sparked a national debate and was an opportunity for several politicians to advance their careers. It took years of planning and debate for African Americans to agree on how to effectively challenge bureaucracy in the subject of higher education. Before the 1960s, there was a substantial amount of Black scholarship and intellectual work, but it was rarely taught in college courses. By the early 1900s, Blacks were segregated into low-quality schools with little chance for higher education, of which Black leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois were very vocal about. Back then, Black students were unprepared for college-level work, a gap that remains to this day. During the 1950s and 60s, groups like the Black Students Union, the Du Bois Clubs, and college chapters of the Black Panther Party, among other groups, were committed to put an end to the kind of history that was being taught in schools at the time, which usually conveyed a picture of Black people as being stupid, parasitic, and primitive. When we take a look at the modern-day African American experience, still marked by the racial inequality that exists in the United States, a context where people like George Floyd have lost their lives due to police brutality, we must remain informed and sensitive to the long and arduous battle that African Americans have fought to gain legitimacy and to try to reverse the effects of colonization, Western expansion, and slave trade. It is important that we question why issues like police brutality continue to happen 163 years after the abolishment of slavery and 66 years after the beginning of the civil rights movement. It is even more important that we get curious about the perceptions that we have and what we know about the history of our nation. The function of African American studies, also known as Black Studies or Afro-American Studies, is to present opportunities for broader and deeper understanding of pivotal moments in the history of the world, as it fills in the gaps of what we have accepted as universal truths. Black Studies also help give voice not only to African Americans, but to all people of color in America. This discipline was born as a bureaucratic response to the social movement that attempted to end racial hierarchy by providing opportunities to the Black community to earn equal rights and participate more fully in American society. In America, the subject of race is a difficult one, and it invariably plays a part in the life experience of every American. Many argue that people of color modernly have the same opportunities as the white majority to succeed. But faced with issues like limited access to good education, segregation, mass incarceration, and economic and political systems that are very good at promoting freedom for all, but don't actively practice colorblindness, can the lasting issues of communities of color truly be understood and effectively addressed? As an immigrant, Black Studies has taught me that, regardless of the color of our skin, we all have personal and social responsibilities of educating ourselves and of trying our best to lead lives of integrity and respect. I believe that in the context of our racially rich nation, we are all equally called to remaining open and willing to listen to different points of view. After all, not every person of color is helpless, and not every white person is racist. Wonder for a moment what would happen if we weren't so quick to judge, and if we actually listened to each other. That's for every one of us to find out.